Minister, I am very frustrated about this, and I listened to the Taoiseach yesterday say to whoever raised it on the floor, I think it was Richard Boy Barrett, that he has written to El Sisi, that's the President or the Prime Minister of Egypt, who says that he can't release people before their trial, that isn't what he does. That's a lie. 200 young students were released by the Sisi government shortly before Christmas, and we spoke about it in this House and pleaded with Charlie Flanagan, the Minister, to make an appeal for Ibrahim Halawa to be released under the same programme. So it is not true to say Sisi can't release them. However, I want to focus on something entirely different, because we have a programme in Europe called the European Neighbourhood Instrument, and under that programme Egypt have received so far €320 million from Europe. Ireland contributes to that programme, and that programme is supposed to promote human rights, fundamental freedoms, and to bring about expressions of freedom of association and assembly, human rights and fundamental freedoms, just to repeat. What the hell are we giving money to Egypt for? To produce a programme while they intern this young man without trial. The 21st trial is happening today. He's extremely ill. We're giving money and we're promoting a beef trade that restarted itself after you visited Egypt. For the first time in 17 years, we are beginning to export live beef again to Egypt. Reckon worth about 40 million to start with. We hope it will go up to 200 million. Is the export of that beef more important than this young man's life? And why are we not using the programme and the instrument where Europe hand this country, under false circumstances, money for human rights, and we export beef in the hope to make lots of profits for the big ranchers in this country, and we sacrifice Ibrahim on the altar of profit? Please address those questions.
The Minister has 4 minutes.
Thank you, Can Corla. The long-running and complex Consular case continues to be a top priority for the Government, and substantial resources and time are being devoted to it, not only by myself but by the Taoiseach, by other ministers, by officials in the Department of Foreign Affairs, by our Ambassador and his team in Cairo, and by the entire Irish diplomatic network. As the House is aware, our Taoiseach on Monday renewed his appeal to the Egyptian President to release its Irish citizen and return him to Ireland without delay. This is the objective of the Government. We are working day in, day out in order to secure this outcome. Ibrahim Halawa's case was back in court today for the latest hearing in the case in which he is a defendant, along with more than 400 other accused persons. Our embassy officials were present in court to observe proceedings, as they have been at each and every hearing of the case to date. And indeed, before coming to this chamber, I received a report on the case. Some progress was made today, as 11 more witnesses were called to give evidence, which they did. At the end of the hearing, Ibrahim's lawyers requested his release on medical grounds, and the judge undertook to examine this matter. I very much welcome this development. The next hearing in the case will take place on the 26th of April. I and my government colleagues have been disappointed. We've been frustrated by the slow progress in this court case. Recent hearings, however, have generally been more substantive. Witnesses now being called. Witnesses are being cross-examined, giving rise to cautious optimism that the trial may now at last be moving towards a conclusion. This is crucially important because, as the deputies are aware, particularly those deputies who visited Cairo earlier in the year, the Egyptian authorities have consistently said that they cannot intervene in a matter that is before the courts, and that this issue can only be resolved on the conclusion of the trial. On a personal note, I wish to say that this complex and sensitive consular case has been a priority matter for me since my appointment as Minister of Foreign Affairs. No stone has been left unturned by the Government and our diplomatic service in our efforts to secure Ibrahim's release and his return home to Ireland, to his family, and indeed to resume his studies. Our embassy in Cairo has dedicated exceptional work to this case, with an unprecedented number of prison visits to ensure that Ibrahim's health and welfare is monitored and that any concerns are immediately followed up in an appropriate and proper manner. Reports about Ibrahim Halawa's health are a matter of the utmost concern for me and my government colleagues. In the light of these concerns, the Government undertook an unprecedented step last week of making arrangements for an Irish medical doctor nominated by the Chief Medical Officer in the Department of Health to visit Ibrahim Halawa in prison and undertake an assessment of his health. The Irish doctor had an opportunity to speak at length with Ibrahim Halawa. The Egyptian authorities have a clear responsibility to ensure the health and welfare of Ibrahim Halawa. The Government and the Department of Foreign Affairs have consistently underlined this in all contacts with the Egyptian interlocutors. Ireland's embassy in Cairo is maintaining ongoing contact with the Egyptian authorities on issues relating to his health and welfare. I have raised these issues repeatedly with Egyptian counterparts, including a further recent face-to-face meeting with Egyptian Foreign Minister Shukri. I am concerned at persistent reports that Ibrahim Halawa is on hunger strike. I urge him, in the strongest possible terms, not to pursue such a course of action and to protect his health in every way possible. I also urge all parties who are in contact with him or who have influence with him to dissuade him from any actions that would be detrimental to his health. In this regard, I welcome the comments of Deputy O'Brien. The Department maintains open lines of communication with the Halawa family, has been keeping family members fully informed of all developments and updates received from the Egyptian authorities. The most recent face-to-face meeting between family and representatives, officers from my department, was on Monday, the 3rd of April. I wish to assure the House that we will continue to keep pressure on Egypt until we see the release and return home of Ibrahim Halawa.
Perhaps the Deputy would like to clarify personally to me by email what comments exactly I made that are damaging to Ibrahim Halawa and his family. I would just like to say we have a history of hunger strikes in this country, going right back before the fight for independence. Nobody goes on hunger strike unless they are utterly driven to it by frustration and left with no other choices, and we know this. That is why that young man has gone on hunger strike. Coming on to 4 years now, we have been polite and nice and praising the ambassador and praising El Sisi's government and telling them how wonderful they are and getting no result. I have every right to raise the question of the influence of economics on political decisions, and it is a political decision to be nice to the Egyptian government instead of telling them, like the Australian government did, you do not do this to our citizen, we're not going to tolerate it. And that is the attitude I think we need to take. And remember, he also suffers from another very dangerous illness called leishmaniasis disease, which kills 2 million people a year globally, and it's spread by overpopulation in places like prisons and places which are poorly sanitised. He needs to be released. And although the doctor that was sent over by the Minister to examine him has made a recommendation that he be released on humanitarian grounds, today we hear that the judge is considering it. We need more than consideration. We need this young man released, looked after medically and then taken home.
Minister Flanagan has 2 minutes.
Thank you. I wish to thank the deputies for raising this issue and indeed for providing me with an opportunity of updating the House last Ceann Comhairle on what is a priority consider case in my department and on my desk. I wish to assure members that the Government continues to do everything it possibly can in order to ensure that the authorities in Egypt are in absolutely no doubt about our determination to see this young man return to his home and to his family. There is absolutely no question of the Government or indeed this House forgetting or indeed neglecting the welfare and health of our citizen. In fact, it's my duty as Minister for Foreign Affairs, my solemn duty is to be responsible for the health and welfare of our citizens abroad. And can I say that no consular case is receiving the type of engagement as is the case of Ibrahim Halawa. The reality, however, is that the Egyptian authorities continue to detain our citizen, and it's only the Egyptian authorities can make a decision to facilitate his return home to Ireland. I wish to assure the deputies that we will continue at every level to do everything possible and indeed appropriate to apply pressure on Cairo on behalf of our citizen and also through our contact with international colleagues and at the European Union. Only Monday of this week, I addressed this issue with EU High Representative Mogherini and also with the Secretary-General of Arab League States, Mr. Abul Gate. our embassy will continue to follow up thoroughly on all of the issues to ensure that his health and welfare is looked after. I wish to repeat my appeal to Ibrahim Halawa to take food and nourishment. I wish to assure the House that we are acting on the matter of the independent medical report, which was undertaken, received and is now being acted upon at the highest level. Can I just say in response to Deputy O'Brien that I expect over the next few days to have a further conversation with my Egyptian counterpart, Foreign Minister Shukri. In the meantime, the Government continues to provide extensive consular support in the case, and I wish to again underline the fact that the Department remains in close contact with both the Halawa family and with the citizens' legal representatives. Thank you.